علينا وين كم زب إذا شقي Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this seminar hosted by the Institution of Civil Engineers. Very happy to have people online watching this afternoon's proceedings, and very happy to have assembled our Avengers team here of IC students, representative presidents, and of course, our featured speaker, Dr. Khadija Khan, well known in Trinidad and Tobago, for her discourses on mental health. So what I would do is go around the room and ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Leighton Ellis. Dr. Ellis, can you introduce yourself?
I can, but my camera is a little bit disabled at this point.
No problem. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Right. So afternoon, everyone. My name is Leighton Ellis, as mentioned before. I am currently the ICE representative for Jamaica. And I also serve at the University of West Indies as a lecturer and the deputy dean in the Department of Civil Engineering and the Faculty of Engineering, respectively. And so I, over a number of years, have also served as graduate student officer and the chair for the West Indies Local Association of the ICE also. And so here I'm hoping to speak, on, as was mentioned before, regarding the academic side of things and some of the struggles that students may be facing and how we can overcome some of these challenges as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ellis. Ms. Tamara Abdul, can you introduce your team as the president of the ICU student chapter in St. Augustine?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tamara Abdul, and I'm the current president of the ICU student chapter at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. And I'm here with my fellow colleagues, Amaya Daniel, the vice president, and Andrew Fonset, the public relations officer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Abdul. Ms. McPherson, can you introduce your team from the ICUE student chapter of Jamaica?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley McPherson, level 3 civil engineering student here at the Faculty of Engineering, UA Mona. I'm here with my team, Tanya Donald. She is the vice president and the secretary. We have Deja Balfour, who's our events coordinator, Lesmar Murray, our treasurer, and Alia Wilson, the public relations officer.
Thank you very much, Ashley. And Dr. Khadija Khan, our guest speaker, our keynote speaker, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to chatting a little bit more with everyone a little bit later. I am a clinical psychologist and also a lecturer in clinical psychology in the Faculty of Medical Sciences here at St. Augustine. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Khan. So I just realized that I didn't introduce myself, which is what I should have done. So my name is Dr. Don Samuel. I am the IC representative for the West Indies region. I am also a co-representative along with representatives in Jamaica, which is Dr. Ellis. We have Miss Loretta, she was here on the chat, where is? Okay, fine. She's the IC representative of Barbados. She was joining us as well on this chat. We have two other representatives, one in Cayman Islands and one in the Bahamas, and there's another one in Bermuda. So they should join us as well. So this is really a Caribbean themed seminar this afternoon. It is geared towards the well-being with a focus on the mental health of our students, our civil engineering students at the Mona campus in Jamaica and the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad. So as IC representative, I just spent a short time describing where the IC is at this point in time. At this point in time, the Institute of Civil Engineers has engaged their representatives around the world to have sessions like these to focus on not just the technical aspects of engineering, but to also focus on those aspects of engineering that affect students, the human factors, what we like to call sometimes the soft skills or interpersonal skills. And so this is one of the themes we're going to focus on this year, which is the well-being of the engineer, from student to graduate. And that is what some of our seminars will focus on this year. One thing to note about the IC, and I'm going to share my screen so you'll see it, is that as a student member, and you should be able to see that screen there, you have many benefits. You have access to a learning hub. You have access to the rewards, to the civil engineering library, to the magazine, to recorded lectures and events. So like this one will also be recorded, to the IC mentoring. And this is the one I want to focus on today, the online well-being portal. There's also a 24-hour telephone help hotline, as they call it. And then there's the Benevolent Fund, okay? These three focus on the well-being and the mental health of young graduates, also graduate members and even older members of the IC who may need help from time to time. And so I would like you to avail yourself of these opportunities to get help if you need such help in coping. And that is what this afternoon's seminar and takeaway will be, about coping with the stresses of being a student. You may have personal stresses. So we have a team here of experts. You have a team of experts who comprise of your own peers. And then you have a team of experts from the academic side, which is Dr. Ellis. He will focus. And then you have Dr. Khan, who is a clinical psychologist who also focuses on the overall well-being of individuals. And that is why we wanted to do this very holistic type of seminar to focus on you. All right. I'm also going to share another part of the screen here. Let me just get to our services, if you can see it. In the our services section, which is the Iec Benefit Fund, you notice there are different types of support you can get. Financial support, workplace support on different topics. There's a COVID-19 response hotline. There's a free 24-hour helpline. And there's well-being support for counseling, mental health, illness, bereavement, online well-being resources. So the IEC themselves have that whole host of resources that you, the student, can access at the IEC Benevolent Fund website, which is iecbenfund.com, iecbenfund.com. All right. And of course, the University of the West Indies, which we are all part of, also has their COVID-19 task force, and you can also seek the help of your different support groups at the universities. So with that in mind, that kind of brings my part on this to a conclusion. I am now going to pass you over to our first, before, let me just get one thing corrected. Dr. Ellis, are you ready to go, or should we have you on later?
I'm ready to go.
All right, so Dr. Ellis is ready to go. So I will now pass you on to Dr. Ellis, who will provide a discourse on the academic side of the equation.
You can probably unmute my video.
Yes, I will do that. There you go.
Oh, that needs to be turned around.
All right.
All right. So, afternoon again, everyone. I'm all the way in the country. Well, for those who are overseas, they would know exactly where the country is. But today, having seen some of the challenges the students have experienced, I'm in my position as Deputy Dean of Quality Assurance. I deal with a lot of student matters, and oftentimes students would complain of a number of the challenges that they've been experiencing prior to COVID, and of course, under the COVID conditions. A number of them are not purely unique in that sense, but some of them are. Now, one of the biggest challenges we would have seen as students and even as staff, because we also are faced with a number of challenges in delivering the content towards the students. One of the key aspects is the use of home, which now becomes the office for many persons as well. And in many cases, especially for students, that could be their bedroom. It's a space that is shared by their siblings, by their parents, by others. And so finding that unique space where you could call your own and to be used it for study becomes a greater challenge. One of the key advice in this area is to, as best as possible, now this is not accessible to all, but as best as possible, is to find a space in your room, if it's your bedroom that you use, a desk or whatever it is, face that desk and have this thing conditioned in your mind that this space is my workspace for schoolwork. So the only thing you use it for is that, because the brain has all these triggers, which our psychologist will tell us soon, shortly thereafter. The brain has all these triggers where you use things in particular. That's why normally if you go to your dining table, you get hungry. If you lie down on your bed, you feel sleepy, even if you never felt like you wanted to do that. So in trying to attend classes, which some of you do, attend classes while lying on your beds, that's why most times we realize that you're disengaged. And when we call upon you, you are not present because you're asleep. And with the customary approach that students have with keeping their cameras off, all the more reason that is the case. So what we want to do is ensure that we have a space that is the school space, that is the workspace that is going to be used going forward. Also, what we've found, or based on other challenges that students have expressed, is also staying focused. And that is also a challenge. No, the illusion is that because most of the classes are being recorded, that you now have access to more time. So students say, oh, I don't need to attend class today because I'll just review the recording at a later date. But later never comes. And then you get more stress because at the end you're watching tons of videos and trying to not just observe, but to also learn. That becomes almost virtually impossible at that point in time. So your quality is now severely compromised as a result of that. So a better approach is to attend the class, and in your attendance of the class, take notes as you would do normally. In fact, take copious notes. Write everything as much as you can and write it in a language that you understand best. So when, if ever you do find the time to review these videos, you're not doing it for the position of learning entirely new, but it's just filling in gaps that you may not have had clarification on the first time of hearing. And that's one of the other key approaches that I advise the students on. The good thing about using the technology is that now you have the opportunity to be many places at the same time. So using it to work in groups is another good approach, even though I think as social beings, we need to have this kind of a face-to-face interaction where possible, and just the whole idea of being in that space. That's very good. But under COVID conditions, it's less likely we're going to get more and more of that. So we have to now find a way of working along with the technology. Also, if possible, wherever it is possible, because we use our devices for so many things. You use your phone for, like I'm doing now, for a Zoom call. You use it to WhatsApp to communicate with your peers, and you do many things with it. It's difficult for the brain to pick up that, okay, now I'm solely in this mode. So as much as you can, if you have devices as well that could be used for work purposes, then when you sit in front of it, when you stand in front of it, whenever you use it, the brain will switch on and know that that's the purpose. So I am here in the space at this time specifically and using this device. Now, again, like I said, that's a luxurious mindset. You may not have all of that, but at the same time, as far as is possible, you want to strive for these endeavors. Now, one of the other things that students do a lot of or make mistakes with is that because they're online all the time, you find them spending a lot more time during the night. So they stay up longer hours than they normally would if they were face-to-face. They are on the computer longer, they're studying longer, and all these things have additional stress upon themselves that they're realizing in some cases, but many times they're not even realizing that they're under this much stress. And so you need to find different ways to relieve some of this stress. If you can still play a sport with your siblings, even if they're 2 years old, find something you can do that will keep your mind away from just work, which you know your bedroom says, or your dining table now says, and everything around you spelled work. You need to have these type of stress relieving situations as well. And this is oftentimes missed by students, and with less social interaction, it becomes even more complex. But find safe ways that you could play with your siblings or your family or even your very close friends in whatever way you can. Go for a walk, go for a run, clear your mind in some way. When also stressed by the studies, it makes no sense sitting there trying to plug more information. The body's already telling you I'm stressed. Take a break, walk away from it. And it has been found useful that even just doing something that's random, that has nothing to do with your work for 5, 10, 15 minutes and then coming back, the brain almost gets an instant recharge in that sense to kind of go at it again with a fresh pair of eyes. So these are some of the few tips that I could advise at this point in time. And even as staff, we have to apply them as well. Because like I said, we get drained by this teaching online. We also have to be preparing have to figure out how to deal with students who are not interacting via these online platforms, classes of 50 or 100, and maybe only 2 or 3 students interacting with you, it becomes a challenge. You're not too sure anymore if the student is learning or they're not learning. You only have to wait for the test to figure that out. And by then, in many cases, it's too late. So it requires adjustment on our part, as I said before, and naturally on yours as well. So we ask that you work with us as we work with you, and work with our psychologists when it's too much to bear and your family can't help anymore, your friends can't help anymore. Fortunately, the universities have facilities that you could go and get these services as well to talk about these challenges you're having, and they can give you a number of coping mechanisms that could be used to assist you through this tough period. And this period, based on all observation, is not going to go away in the very, very short term. So expect that it's going to be a little bit longer, and as such, you have to adjust yourself to this new normal going forward. So that's what I would want to share at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ellis. That was indeed a very insightful perspective from the lecturer's view. Having checked online, I have not received any questions from, oh no, I have a question. So this question is from Rishka, hope I got the last name correct, Jibo. And the question is, many of our households are toxic. How do we work around that? That indeed
I will
is very
reserve that for the
pertinent
professional. I'll reserve that for the professional amongst us. So she will address when it's her time to speak.
Yes, Dr. Khan did indicate she's checking the chat. So Dr. Khan, that will be a question just to stick up in until we get to your presentation. All right. Any more questions for Leighton online? I am not seeing any more. So at this point in time, we will move to our younger population. So I am handing over the session gladly to Ms. Tamara Abdul, our president of the University chapter of Iec, student chapter of Iec in the St. Augustine campus. And she and her team will go through the topic on, I think it's, yes, there we go, coping with online learning. All right. So Ms. Tamara, you may take it away.
Good afternoon. My name is Tamara Abdul, and I'm the current president of the Iec student chapter at the UWI St. Augustine. Along with my colleagues, the vice president, Amaya Daniel, and the public relations officer, Andrew Fonset, we will be addressing how to cope with online learning. Number 1, find a suitable study space. Ideally, the space should be somewhere quiet and away from all distractions. If you have a desk in your room, try to designate an area for study. Make it separate for your relaxation from your relaxation space, so not your bed. Or try going into another room. Number 2, get organized and stay organized. Try to keep your desk neat so you will have everything in order and wouldn't have to spend time digging around looking for things. It will also make you feel more inclined to use your desk. Map out your semester. Now we are already almost 2 months in. However, it is not too late. You have your timetable and you will know expected dates for assignments and assessments. Set reminders for important dates and get a planner or simply a notebook and write down everything. 3, manage your time wisely. Get up early. Try to get up at a reasonable time every day so you can gather yourself and mentally prepare for the day ahead. Have a routine and try your best to stick to it. Prioritize tasks to avoid distractions and set goals. This way you will boost your productivity. 4, eliminate distractions. Act like you are in a classroom. You can even dress up as if you're actually going to school to get you in that frame of mind to work. Do not use your phone during class. Put it on vibrate. You can check your messages later unless it is something urgent, so that you do not miss any key points your teacher would note. Take notes during class to keep your mind engaged, as well as to reduce the amount of revision and note-taking you will need to do when watching the class recordings. Also, do not be too reliant on the recordings, thinking you will learn this later. Pay attention in class and try to learn as much as possible one time. If you're not feeling it that day to take notes, just try to be attentive.
Hi. So it is important to take breaks, right? While we may feel like just 1 more hour and we can figure the solution out, we may spiral into a 3-hour distress situation. My advice, take a break. Call a friend, maybe play some games. You know, my preference is Call of Duty. Or simply just go outside and play with your pets, right? Also, in engineering, we see just how important our support is. And if we are going to be resilient, we must not neglect our supports. We can do this by spending time with our family. It helps us to stay grounded. We can schedule meetings for revision or form study groups. Believe it or not, these things help in the long run. And exercise. Even if it's to do a stretch or yoga, take at least 10 minutes each day to go for a run or a walk. You don't have to do this consistently, but as often as you can to keep your brain and body active and healthy.
Hi, everyone. So eating well is also essential. Have a good breakfast or good meal before studying. You know, there are some good foods like vegetables, there are high protein foods, there are whole grain foods. Also try to consider drinking water. It also helps to revitalize the mind and have a clear mindset for the day to come. Studying in different places also helps. As Dr. Ellis also pointed out, taking a walk, you know, to have a clear mindset, study in a different space. Sometimes, due to online learning, we are confined to our room because it's usually a place where we feel safe to be able to have our own time to study or even have our own time to relax. But to be able to set the mood and set the tone for study, we can have a furnished desk, a proper chair, so that it sets the tone and the mood for the day to be able to study and work properly. One example I could give you is Albert Einstein. One of the equations he came up with, E is equal to mc squared, was an energy equation he came up with while walking. So walking also helps to clear the mind. It helps you to be innovative thinkers. It helps you to be able to figure out things more easily within a nice frame of mind. Next is you notify your family of your schedule. You could put it in a central location, like on a fridge or on a notice board. Ensure that you have a proper consensus with your family, have a proper agreement with them so that they know your working hours and your study hours so that you won't be interrupted. Having your work well formatted helps you to maximize your time more efficiently as well. So you know what you're trying to accomplish during the day, and you set certain goals and certain standards to be able to accomplish it.
This is a little mind map of the points that we made. Find a suitable study space, get organized, manage your time wisely, eliminate distractions, take breaks, have a support system, change it up, exercise, eat well, and notify your family of your schedule. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Tamara and her team for that excellent presentation on time management. You know, I would have really appreciated that when I was a student because I didn't really manage time that well. So that is really quite insightful. Having looked at the YouTube channel at this point in time, I didn't see any questions on that presentation, except a passing comment from Mr. Jordan Johnson on the issue of, well, what he said is that he was referring to playing a game that if he started to play a game, it might take up the entire day. I hear you, Sue, because I'm a Call of Duty fan as well, and I remember playing this game from sun up to sundown, so, and I never get any work done. So that is a passing comment there from Mr. Johnson. Right, so we will now move on to Miss Ashley McPherson and her team of experts who will be presenting on, and I need to remember what that topic was, coping with exams. Oh boy, very, very interesting topic. So Ms. McPherson, you are free to go.
Okay, hi guys, once again. This presentation is more going to be more of me talking. So I'll be telling you guys about some personal experiences as well as what you should be aware of. And then my vice president as secretary will come in and talk to you guys about some tips. So exam preparation. So last year around March 2020, when we first came into this online learning thing, it wasn't that bad because we had, of course, level 1 students, you guys should know, those going to level 2. In your second semester, that's generally when you start getting a bag of projects. But the thing for us is that we already started prepping for these projects. So when we came online, it was more of just us setting up these project meetings, getting them done, and then we were able to finish them and get into the exam groove. So for exams in that time period, the exam was open for a period of time, say like the entire day or like two days or so. So I actually found myself going on the road and coming back to do the exam or going somewhere else. Like I didn't have to be that focused, and I feel that it kind of allowing them to do that for us, they were trying to do a good thing because, it's the first time we're doing this and we're all new to this environment. But for us, it kind of made my mind really laid back. And it was just, the exam period wasn't as bad then. However, for coming into third year, doing your third year online it's a challenge because, we are doing your final year projects, and then you also have your individual course projects. So for last semester, I think I speak for most of my class when I say that we were severely stressed. Our mental health was in question. I found myself crying a couple times. It was really hard. And then when it came on to the exam time, that was even harder because we found ourselves doing projects during exam time. So to prepare for an exam was strange. I think that for the first exam, we were still doing projects, and I had to set a schedule and say, okay, I'm going to just take this one day and do this entire course, and we'll just see how this goes. And it's not like I did not want to start studying earlier. The thing is just that we were doing projects right throughout the entire semester. So then when it came on to my last exam, I found myself studying for, I'm not kidding when I say this, approximately 6 hours the day before the exam. That's all I studied for the exam because of, I would say, I think it was poor time management based on the fact that I wasn't aware that these projects would have taken up so much time, as well as sometimes we had to go on the road for a project. Sometimes you just really and truly want to come off the computer, and it was just new territory and everything. So you guys should be really mindful of that. I'm telling you from now, prepare yourselves for these projects. Start from early. You need to be able to pick up the slack and ensure that you are in a group with people you're familiar with or familiar with their work style. So you know that when push comes to shove, they will pick up the slack. So last semester was pretty horrid for us in terms of exams. I found myself at the last moment saying, whatever happens, just happens. So that was just a personal encounter. However, for this semester, it's less because we are doing less courses. You're only doing the courses that you want to do. We still have projects though, but we're learning from our mistakes in the sense that we have a better schedule. We know that we're going to be on top of things now. We know that we're going to start breaking up the work instead of coming together and just doing it together. We're going to start breaking up the work and then coming together and putting everything together. And this semester is also an advantage because it has a study week. So I know that I know when my study week is. So by the time I get to my study week, I know that my project is either almost finished or I can put it on hold because it's at an appropriate pace. And so I can just get into my study mode. So now I can hand over to my vice president, who is going to give you guys some additional tips.
Now that Ashley has made you guys aware of everything that may go wrong in terms of studying, let's walk you through the exam itself to see how you can get the most out of the exam in terms of getting that A. Now, the first tip is that always log on early. In the case of in-person exams, always arrive early. you know, you need that time to calm yourself down and really encourage yourself. And the second thing is the first skill in engineering, which I bet you guys can't really guess that. Well, I'll tell you, it's to read. Read all the questions and the instructions carefully. And even if you feel as if you have read it carefully, reread them. And the exam at this point hasn't started yet. And you were early, you got there early, so you had enough time to look through the exam without writing, of course. So it's here now that you can really budget your time and determine the order in which you can do the exam. So I said the order, meaning that although the exam is numbered 1 through to probably 8, you don't need to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can actually, when you go through, some people decide to choose the harder questions first. Some people choose to do the easier questions first. That's all up to you. But here you can determine the order. And you hear, now we reach the process where you hear, please begin. But how do you attack the question, the first question? Well, the first thing I'll encourage you to do is pay attention to the words within the question. For example, you have words such as who, what, state, identify, list, and all of those are usually, they call for direct answers with little to no expounding needed. And there are also words such as how, describe, explain, why, you know, those lend itself to expounding. And even in that case, in the expounding part, you can break it down into point, example, explain. So you state the point to answer the question. Sometimes you can even reword the question to answer the point aspect. Then you get an example and then you explain. And that can't go wrong. That you can't fail with that. And of course, you use all the marks, judge your approach to the questions as well. For calculation questions, which we're engineers, we're going to eventually end up doing, it's important to show all working, and it must be done in clear and logical steps. Now, time and time again, you hear lecturers complaining about not being able to follow your working or anything that's on the page, and you think that it's because you wrote it. Of course you understand what you wrote, but you need to do it in such a way that the marker can actually get it. So I recommend, it's worked for me, that you can even write step 1, step 2, and continue like that. All right. So after doing this, you're well on your way in your exam. But suppose you get stuck on a question. Well, it's recommended that instead of just wasting time and busting your brain on that question right there and then, what you can do is leave the space to answer the question, go through the exam and come back to it. And you do all of this because you want to reduce the amount of time that you're not doing anything in the exam, because you have to finish the exam. All right, here's another scenario. Suppose you did not budget your time properly and you have like 10 minutes left and one whole question left to do. Well, at this point, what you can do is jot down your main ideas to answer those questions. If you can't answer the questions, you know, go ahead, do it, no problem, fine. But if you find yourself only, like you cannot fully answer the questions in the time frame, but you can just jot down the main ideas, you can get the points for that. As well as my last tip is to never, ever, ever leave any part of the paper blank. It makes no sense to leave a question blank when you can get 1 mark for writing something that you thought may be foolishness, but it makes sense to the question. So put something that shows knowledge, you know? And even if you don't, if let's say it's a workout question and you don't fully know the full extent of the workout, but you know the steps, write down the steps, don't afraid. So those are my tips for doing your exams. All the best.
Okay, thanks very much, President McPherson and Ms. Donald. That's actually another insightful presentation from our young folks. I had some questions online, and anybody can answer it. Feel free to raise the answer. The first question was from Mr. Daniel Stewart. And, well, more a comment rather than a question. The focus was on projects and assignments, and tying up the exams was a disaster. So I think that will speak more to time management. Anybody has any comments on time management that could be helpful to not just Mr. Stewart, but to all colleagues in this chat?
Well, in terms of your assignment, because the assignment is not as heavy as your project, the minute you get it, do it. Just do it. If you get it in the morning, do it the night. If you get it in the morning, do it the next day. Just the minute you get that particular assignment, you need to read through it. You need to see, okay, how much does this entail? How much energy does this entail? How much time will this entail? And just get it done straight away. In terms of your projects, as I said, you need to ensure you have a strong team. For you guys, it's really hard because you don't really know these people. And well, for the first years, because the second years we have a sense of who they're working with. But you guys don't really know who you're working with. You're not really sure of their work ethic, and you might suffer in that sense. But you need to learn to also pick up the slack on everyone else's end. Like, try to just get into that mode that, okay, if this person doesn't do this, I need to be prepared to have this done. And as I said, when it comes on to projects, just be aware of how long this project might take. Like, it will help in the beginning to list out, okay guys, we're going to do the intro, the data collection, the data analysis, and yada yada yada. Or we're going to finish the intro by this week, and that will help you, especially because your lecturers might tell you if you have a mid-semester beforehand. And so you might know your schedule. You might know if you have a mid-semester in 2 weeks, or and then you know early enough when your final exam will be. So you should try your best to look at the calendar and try just set out your timetable so that it works good for you.
Okay, thanks very much. There's another question which I think might be appropriate for Dr. Khan to answer during her presentation. So I'll take a note of it. It's from I guess it's Miss G. Sandy. What do you suggest when family had died in this pandemic and funerals are scheduled during classes and important exam? How can one remain focused on these type of distractions? So that question is a very important question. Sadly enough, that is a reality in this pandemic. And I will leave that to Dr. Khan to address in her discourse. So at this time, thank you very much, Ashley, for answering that question. At this time, I'm going to invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Khan, to address us on the issue of mental health. And we have lots of time to talk about this very important issue that I believe is the real urgent outcome of the COVID pandemic, that our mental health would be affected in one way or the other. And so I'm sure her discourse will apply to everyone. So Dr. Khan, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Samuel, and good afternoon again, everyone. So I'm going to share screen with you. So just give me get that up. There we go. Okay, and just in the interest, so I got a notification saying my internet connection is unstable. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to keep my video off, lest well, you would have the technical terms better than me, lest I risk losing the connection. So I wanted to spend a little time talking to you about mental health. I must say that the three presentations we've had before have been excellent. They've touched on so many pertinent aspects that deal with mental health, that deal with your coping and functioning during these times. So much of what I will say will touch on some of that, so it might reinforce some of that. But hopefully there are a few things in here that will resonate with you and hopefully give you some tips about how you can cope even more effectively. And I forgot to mention another, when I was introducing myself, another reason that I appreciate the invitation is I'm also a graduate Mona campus student. I did my master's at UWI Mona, and I spent 4 years living and working in Jamaica. And these COVID times, I miss Jamaica. I was last there in 2018. So I'm glad that I have the next best option. I get to interact with some of the Mona students. So let's jump into it. So, you know, university in the age of COVID, it's just turned things on its head. You're looking forward to your face-to-face classes, getting hands-on experience, getting the campus experience. As young adults, you're looking forward to socializing. That's a healthy part of your development as well. But instead, what have you gotten? So a lot of concern about health and safety. And so these here have no value judgments to them. It's just showing how they've changed, because of course we need the health and safety precautions to keep us safe. Maybe a good thing is you don't have to commute as long. We have the technology now where we have been able to transition to virtual learning, virtual teaching, virtual assessment. And by now we are approximately a year into the pandemic. So hopefully we've gotten the hang on both sides. Your lecturers have gotten the hang of teaching you online, and you have gotten accustomed as students to being taught online. And you know, over the past year, we've heard this term. It had gotten to a point when I actually got fed up of hearing this term, this new normal. So I asked myself, what is the new normal? Have we settled into a new normal? I heard the students speak about how much stress they were experiencing last semester, having to cope with projects, assignments, exams, etc. Now, when there's a definition for new normal, this term existed pre-pandemic, and it's this state that a society enters into at the end of a significant event or a disaster. But arguably, this pandemic is changing. And so we have a lot of uncertainty. And so it's arguable that we've settled into some new normal. You know, there's still things that we feel like we're adjusting to. Our stress levels have not, for many of us, gone back to baseline. So what I wanted to talk about is, pardon me, is a little bit about stress and then how we cope. Okay? So let's acknowledge first the stress impact of this pandemic. So when I teach about stress, we talk about 4 different categories that stresses could fall into. And when we look at it, this pandemic is hitting all 4. Is it a major disaster? Yes, a global health pandemic certainly is. Has it brought about life changes and strains? Most definitely. All of us have had to cope with a number of changes. Is it a chronic stressor? Indeed it is. We're a year into it and we know that the end is still not yet in sight. Does it pose daily hassles? Yes, that too. So whether it is your internet connectivity, whether it's you've left the house and you realize you've forgotten your mask, there are these little daily hassles that also contribute to our stress levels. So maybe you'll agree with me that we're all experiencing heightened levels of stress. And so acknowledging that is an important step, because then we realize that our coping needs to be up to par as well. So I've had a Padlet here, but instead I will just ask you to indicate either in the comments or the chat can you tell me what are some of your main COVID-related stressors? And so is it time management? Is it project deadlines? Is it being at home? Is it finances? Can we hear a couple of your responses? And Dr. Samuel, I might ask you to, if we do get some responses in the YouTube audience, from our YouTube audience, and I'm hailing out the YouTube audience now, please unmute and tell me what they are. But for those who are on the, for the students who are on the Zoom link, if you could type in the chat and let's identify some of the stresses that you've been dealing with. What would you say they are?
Yeah, sure thing. I actually placed your question in the YouTube chat.
Fantastic.
So that if there are any answers or any questions, I'll definitely channel them your way.
Yeah, because one of the things we have to recognize is that different people are being affected differently. So for one person, it might be juggling the different demands. For another person, it might be their home life and their situation of being at home so much. And we do have that question about the toxic households, which I will address. Okay, so in the chat, can we hear from any of the students what you would say are some of your main stressors? So we're hearing from Ashley. So it's stressful being home and having to monitor my siblings while doing my own work. So it's like having two jobs, Ashley? Because those are two very important ones, your own work plus helping your family. Thank you for sharing that. And I imagine for others as well, different aspects of home life might also be a challenge. And as you are students, oftentimes school-related concerns are some of your biggest issues. So as part of the COVID-19, so I'm a member of the UE COVID-19 task force, and we just completed a report. Maybe some of the students might recall participating in a survey. So we have a survey of about 5,000 of the university community, UE community across the 5 campuses. And what we found were the main concerns. We asked students to identify their main concerns, and indeed, they were school related. So the first one by far, and this was pre and during the pandemic, it was a fear of failure as it pertains to their schoolwork. And the second and third ones were also school related. People were concerned about how are they going to complete their degrees and manage or pursue their educational goals. So we know then that you're facing stress. We know that you're under heightened stress levels. So one of the things you also want to be mindful of is what is your stress reaction? How do you react to stress? But before we keep continuing to talk about stress like it's a bad word, first let's understand that not all stress is bad. In fact, a certain amount of stress is actually good because it helps motivate us to perform. As you can see on this curve, having too little stress is also not a good thing, because then we get too laid back and we're not really performing up to the levels of our full potential. So we ideally want to be in that yellow zone where there's enough stress to motivate you to perform. You feel challenged by it and you can rise to the occasion. And what we need to be wary of is when it starts to tip over into the orange and red zones, where you start to feel exhausted and you start to have to deal with burnout. So the idea is not to have no stress in your life. The idea is to have enough stress to motivate you and to deal with anything else beyond that. So checking in, so some of the other issues that you're dealing with are death and grief, toxic homes, time management, finances, unstable internet. So a variety of very real concerns that you're dealing with on a daily basis. So having all of these stressors, we react in different ways. So what I'd like you to do now is, as you see these symptoms come up, I want you to do your own personal stress audit. So the first category that we react to stress is psychological, and this is one of the most common ones. And I'm just checking in the chat. Andrew says, like a diamond, sometimes a little stress is required to shine and blossom. Indeed, a little pressure is not a bad thing. And so we want to find that zone, that optimal zone. When stress starts to become too much, where we start to feel like it's exceeding the resources we have to deal with it, then it becomes distress. And these are some of those symptoms. So for example, some people feel worried, they get frustrated, some people get irritable, they find themselves feeling tense and unable to stay calm. So as we go through these, I want you to think about, how do you manifest stress? So which of these psychological symptoms do you experience? And then we also experience cognitive symptoms. So if you've been finding it difficult to concentrate, having problems with your attention or your memory, maybe you're having difficulty making decisions, you might want to ask yourself if what you're experiencing is also the result of stress. So for example, I found that I just couldn't keep track of things as effectively as I could before. So now I rely very heavily on the calendar. I use the calendar on my phone. So I put things in it, because if it's not in a calendar, I'm likely to forget. So although I know it's happening, I've found a strategy to help me deal with it. And we'll talk more about strategies after. The third category is physical. So for some people, stress manifests physically. Have you been having more headaches, more digestive problems, these aches and pains, or muscle tension? Has your sleep worsened? Are you just feeling tired all the time with no identifiable reason? So again, you might want to ask yourself, could it be because of stress? Now, physically, stress can also exacerbate a current medical condition. So if you are dealing with, say, a chronic illness, or if you are unwell, stress, it's very likely that if you have these high stress levels, it can also worsen your medical condition. And finally, the last category is social and behavioral. So in terms of how you interact, how you behave with others as well. So have you been more irritable? Are you having more arguments? Or maybe you're isolating, you don't really want to interact and go out. Have you been procrastinating? And you know, one of the things I wanted to touch on, because it's come up in your concerns about time management, is you might want to dissect it and see if part of the issue might be procrastination, and whether the procrastination might be a result of the stress that you're feeling. And one of the things I could tell you now is that the research has shown quite clearly that procrastination does not mean that you're lazy. Procrastination probably has more to do with stress and depression, etc., than you're being lazy or not wanting to do stuff, etc. Okay, so again, do your own little audit and see if any of this resonates with you. Has it been affecting your appetite, your intimate relations, your substance use? Okay? So that said, here's one of the take homes I want you to have today, that stress reactions are subjective and they're very variable. What does that mean? It differs for all of us. You might be the young lady at the top where, you know, you internalize and you think about it and maybe you withdraw a little bit. Or you might be Hulk at the bottom, you erupt, you get annoyed, you get angry. So whichever one, there's no value judgment. We react differently. There's no one prescriptive way to respond to stress. Because somebody does not respond like you doesn't mean they're not stressed. So we're talking about this stress. So we know then that we have the stressors. So stress in a sense is inevitable. It's all around us, but burnout, get into that red part of the curve, burnout is very preventable. So let's talk now about some of the strategies that you can use to help combat this and to help achieve optimal mental health. But before I do that, can we have one or two responses in the chat about which category of stress do you think you are affected most by? So are you getting psychological symptoms? Are you getting cognitive reactions, physical, or is it more of the social behavioral? So let us know which ones you are being affected by. Because when you start to recognize that these signs in yourself, it's a little sign that you know what, okay, I need to do something about it. So why are we concerned? Why should we be concerned? Because things like stress and stressors will disrupt your path to well-being and resilience and adaptive coping. So things like if it's a mental health challenge like depression, anxiety, or substance use, misuse, or it can affect your behaviors. So if you've been skipping class or breaking beach, as we say, it can lead to these unethical and unprofessional behaviors like cheating. So oftentimes when these things happen, it's not that students are being intentionally anarchic or unprofessional. Sometimes it's also a response to stress. So if you have better adaptive ways to deal with it, then it will prevent some of those. So I'm seeing in your responses that many of you are affected by all of the categories. So psychological, cognitive, physical, and social. So we're seeing then this is a very real thing, it's a very tangible thing, and therefore we need to address it. So first I wanted to highlight that the UE does have a number of resources for you. And you've heard from Dr. Samuel about all of the resources that ICE has for you as well. So I do encourage you to be aware of all these resources and the different parts of the university. So whether it's financial, whether it's for academic advising, whether you think you need some counseling, whether you need some support because you're dealing with a learning disability. So the UE does have quite a number of resources on all the campuses. And so I do encourage you to reach out if you need the help. But let's talk about some strategies now about how you can cope for your mental health. So first is to remember, so we are concerned with the whole student, you as a person with all of these different aspects they are functioning. And while your studies may be one of your main priorities, you also have all of these aspects to your wellness that you need to tend to. So some of these tips that I'm going to share are going to tap into all of these different ones. Okay, so for the first one, communication is key, that you are aware of what needs to be done in what time frame and who are the persons or entities that you need to communicate with. So just a simple thing like checking your UE email frequently, using your virtual learning environment, making sure that you know by now you're savvy with how to navigate the virtual learning platform on both campuses, so my learning at St. Augustine and our VLE at Mona. By now, hopefully you have a good hang of it. And if you don't, it's okay, because you know what, usually in student groups, there's always somebody who you can turn to and say, oh, I know Ashley knows how to do that. Let me message her and find out how do you check X, Y, and Z. So I do encourage you to recognize that in the absence of that face-to-face presence, we don't have people sitting in their offices as much, so you can't just pop in. It's going to be communication, effective communication that's going to bridge that gap. My second tip, stay connected. Stay connected. It's very easy now, especially depending on your personality type. So a lot of people say, you know, for introverts, they don't mind this reduced face-to-face contact as much. But remember, we're supposed to physically distance, not social distance, just with the semantics there. So you don't want to keep open lines of communication and have regular check-ins with your peers, your friends, your mentors, and your family. Okay, so especially if you realize it's starting to get a little bit much to you, I want you to recognize that your connection with others is going to be a good form of social support for you. Okay? So this one was mentioned by one of your presentations earlier, so I want to reinforce it. So because we have so much uncertainty now or new things that you're trying to navigate, maintaining a routine is really important because then it takes away some of that uncertainty. Or for those of you finding it hard to manage your time, or if you're inclined towards procrastinating, you're very well intentioned and you mean to get it done, but you can't seem to get it done, then having a routine is going to be really important. And as you can see from this clock that I put up here, it's not just about the studying, but playing with your dogs, eating, spending time with family, engaging in your hobbies. So you want to have a routine for all of these. Okay? And then self-care is critical. Self-care is critical. So I remember some of the things, as a student, you say sleep is a concept, and the work is a priority. So you'll push, 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 and go, go, go till it gets done. But your self-care is also very important. So one thing I want you to think about is this phrase, and I use it often in many different audiences. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So if you allow your cup to get drained, you don't even have for yourself, much less to devote for your other activities and responsibilities. So whether it's with your family, your community, clubs and societies you're in, etc. And I found this little meme here on a civil engineer cheated through college. So as I mentioned before, one of the reasons for unethical behavior, unprofessional behavior, subpar behavior is when people are not responding to stress properly. So they're overwhelmed by stress and therefore it starts to affect the quality of the work that you do. So hopefully none of you will ever be responsible for projects like these that we see here in that meme. And so to help you on that, remember to take good care of yourself. So what I want you to think about now is, what do you do for self-care? What is your bit of self-care? So do you get a massage? Do you take a long shower? Do you do your nails? So self-care is not just an activity, but it's something for you, something that allows you to refresh and recharge. Okay? When you're pressed for time, sometimes you think, I don't have time for that. But allowing yourself, your cup to drain to empty brings diminishing returns. So it's best that you take the time out to devote some time to self-care. So I see the question there, what can you do for self-care? And I would say you could think about it from two strands. The first one is, what do you like? What brings you comfort? So for example, one of the things that I have done during the pandemic is pandemic gardening. So I've started over this past year, my garden has grown a lot, but I have a succulent garden and that was chosen intentionally because succulents can handle a little neglect. So I don't have to feel guilty if I don't water them, I don't tend to them. I can ignore them for a week and they'll still be thriving. Because if I had something more high maintenance and I come back and I saw it died, it would make me feel worse. So you want to think about the things that you like and you have an interest in. And then also think about where your gaps are. So you know how you were thinking about the categories of symptoms? So if one of the things that's affecting you, it's the physical, so you're getting a lot of physical symptoms, then you might want some of your self-care to counter that. So whether it's a massage or a long shower, whether it is, you have, right now I have some skin lotion in my office. So it's a nice one that I have So it's a hemp-based hand protector. So when I put that on, it's scented really nicely, but it also gives me protection for my skin. With all the sanitizing now, my hands get dry. So think about it from both strands. If it's cognitive, then maybe you want to do something that's mentally relaxing. So hopefully you are having some ideas about what will work best for you. Now, this can also be a form of self-care. But there's another reason I've put this on its own: exercise, exercise, exercise. So this tip is given to you by your fellow students as well. But I want to emphasize it here because the research evidence again has been varied. There's a huge evidence base for the effectiveness of exercise for improving your mental health. And so a lot of times, or traditionally, we thought about it as the benefits being because of the feel-good endorphins. But they've also found that exercise, especially when done consistently, boosts serotonin levels and also our endogenous opioids. So we have cannabinoids, or endogenous cannabinoids. So it makes you feel good in different ways as well. So exercise not just for your physical health, but for your mental health. And the WHO guidelines are 30 minutes a day for about 5 days a week. And this can be anything that you can do. You don't need to go to the gym. You can exercise at home, whatever space you have, whether you have equipment or not. So I really do encourage you to make sure you're getting in your daily or weekly dose of exercise. And you can exercise to suit your fitness level. So if you're like me and your fitness level has waned, then don't choose something where you're going to overexert and then you're like, no, I'm not able with that. So choose something appropriate for your level. So when I was having problems with my knees, I found some seated yoga routines, which put less strain on my knees, and they were fantastic. So the idea is find something that you're likely to stick with. And I really want to stress this one because it's something many of us do almost automatically. And I know many students do it. We compare ourselves. And the thing about comparison is that you'll always find somebody who is smarter, funnier, more efficient, more effective, more successful. There's a quote: comparison is the thief of joy. And I really think that is true because comparisons usually are flawed. We never have all of the information, all of the metrics to make a valid, objective comparison. And oftentimes when we compare, we judge ourselves really harshly. Often we can be our own worst critics. So remember, they're awesome and you are also awesome. So if this is something that you do, remind yourself. Remind yourself this is one of the things you want to call a timeout on. And don't compare yourself. Everybody's fighting their own battles. You are fighting your own battle. And so you want to do the best you can with what you have. Yes, you want to succeed. Okay, but we're all facing our own unique battles. And so my 7th of the 10 tips for you: don't sweat the small stuff. Who amongst you are the perfectionists? You have set very high standards, and nothing is wrong with high standards. But if it's leading you to experience more anxiety, more distress, then it might be something you want to think about. That if it is that you can get something done, maybe it's not a perfectionistic standard, but it will get you through and you can complete that task and then move on to the next thing, then you want to look at the bigger picture. So pick and choose your battles, the things that you can afford to compromise on or set aside or move beyond. Please do that. So especially the type A personalities amongst us, those of us who are very driven and very particular, as I said, very perfectionistic, that can actually work against you in a high stress setting. And have a life. So this one came up as tips as well, to also remember And it can come in whether it's doing your self-care activity, because your self-care activity could also be a hobby, something that you enjoy. So for me, it's been the pandemic gardening. I also have 2.5 cats, and I say 2.5 because the half a cat, he's my neighbor's cat, but he spends most of his time by me, so I kind of consider him mine too. And so I spend a lot of time with my pets. So what about you? What are the things that you do outside of your school-related activities? So an example here, this is a UWI grad, one of our UWI grads at St. Augustine and St. Brady, who also represented Trinidad and Tobago at Taekwondo. Now, you don't have to represent at the national level, but hopefully everybody has a little repertoire of things that they enjoy doing. So can you identify some of those? What do you enjoy? So is it that you listen to music? Is it that you cook? Are there any bakers or chefs among you? Any artists, musicians? What do you enjoy doing? Do you, so let's see, was it Ashley who says, you know, she spends time with her siblings as well. So the idea is that it's very important for you to have something else that you enjoy to help manage that stress. And the final one is I do encourage you to live in awe. You know, sometimes when you're dealing with deadlines and projects and you're worried about grades and marks, etc., it can take some of the joy away of what you're doing because you just focus on what you have to get done. But just as how they tell you to, you know, stop and remember to smell the roses, I want you to never lose your wonder and your awe and curiosity. So remember what it was that inspired you to pursue civil engineering and to want to become a civil engineer. So whatever it is, so I found this picture online and I look at that bridge and it's just amazing. It's stunning. And I love how it fits so well into that aesthetic behind. It fits in with nature. So whatever it is that inspired you to have a career in civil engineering, remind yourself of that when you feel as though the stress is getting the better of you. And remember that what we're going through now is temporary. So 5 years from now, we'll have our pandemic stories to talk about. 10 years from now, you might be sharing your story about how you coped with fellow students like yourself. So I like that quote from Einstein. I have no special talents. I'm only passionately curious. So continue to have your wonder, your awe, and your curiosity. And oh, I have a bonus one. My numbering here. To think positive. And if you get tired, learn how to rest and not to quit. Again, I like to give you examples from the research that we have research evidence that shows that positive thinking produces a positive reality. Some of the studies even have a formula. So they say if you counter every negative thought with 3 positive thoughts, that ratio is effective to help produce a more positive outcome. So there is some value and some credibility in keeping a positive mind and thinking positively. And finally, I'm very proud to be an alum of the UWI, and now I'm a staff member of the UWI. So we are all a light rising from the West. And just remember that you can do this, you are doing this, and the end is in sight. And one day you're going to have this picture there. You're going to be in your graduation gown. You're going to be proud Pelicans. So you can do this. Okay? So I'm going to pause there. What I had, I'm not sure how we're going for time. What I do have, Dr. Samuel, you can guide me here, is I also thought if the students were interested, 3 relaxation strategies as well. So it might take me maybe about 6 or 7 minutes to go through them. Are you all interested in some relaxation strategies?
Okay, so I'll put it up in the YouTube chat. Of course, they would have heard that question. I'm not sure. I'm not getting any responses. So. But
Tamara says yes. Amaya says indeed.
Oh,
Ashley says
okay.
most definitely.
All right, so I am outvoted. Right, so go ahead with the relaxation
Okay.
techniques.
So again, I've chosen 3 that have research evidence to be effective in high stress situations. They require no equipment or resources or any expense, and you can do them anywhere that you are. So the first one is progressive muscle relaxation. And what it does is it teaches you to relax your muscles in a 2-step process where you first tense the muscle and then relax it. Now it's important to do both. You have to tense first so you can get that contract and then you relax. This has been shown to lower tension, stress and anxiety levels, and it can help with some physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, and sleep problems. So can we spend a few seconds trying it? So I'm gonna turn my video on here, and you won't be able to see my whole body, and it might be more effectively for you to see me while we're doing this. So you wanna sit comfortably where you're at, legs, feet flat on the ground, arms comfortably resting on your thighs or at your side. And let's just do about 2 muscle groups. So I want you to isolate your feet. Okay, and just listen to my voice. So you want to take a slow, deep breath. So breathe in and tense your feet. So tense, 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 and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you don't tense your muscles too hard because you shouldn't feel any pain or cramping. Okay. Then you want to move up your body. So can you isolate your calf muscle? So let's go up and breathe in and tense. 2, 3, 4, 5, and release. 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can actually do a whole body scan in just a few minutes. And sometimes when I don't want to do a whole body scan, I just focus on the areas where I know I feel the tension. So for example, my jaw. So often I'm trying to stretch, clench and release my jaw, or maybe it's in my neck or shoulders, maybe it's in your lower back. So this can help especially if you feel the physical tension, this exercise can help. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's try the second one. So this one is mindful breathing. So mindfulness has become quite popular over the last few years, and mindful breathing is a very effective strategy. If you do it at night, it can help improve your quality of sleep. And if you're doing it in the morning, it can help improve your attention and your emotional control. So with this example, I tell you to set an alarm, and I have 15 minutes here, but if you have 5 minutes, just do it for 5 minutes. And the idea is that if you set the alarm, you don't have to keep looking at your phone to know how long to do it for. You can just set the alarm, start it, and then when the alarm goes off, you can stop. So again, you want to sit comfortably, and then you're keeping your mind focused on your breathing and the movement of your belly. So you want to do belly breathing. So if you're breathing in and you find your shoulders lifting, then no, we're doing it wrong. So when you're belly breathing, imagine you have a balloon in your tummy. And when you breathe in, the balloon inflates. Okay? So the idea then is that you're breathing in and you're breathing out, and you're concentrating just on your breathing. Now, guess what? Thoughts are going to come and distract your head. Like right now, you're probably thinking, gosh, I'm a bit hungry. I wonder how much longer this thing going on for. And so if the thought comes in your brain, that's okay. Just let it go. Refocus on your breathing. Whatever the thought is, you're hungry, you're tired, what do I have to do tonight? I'm supposed to call back so-and-so. Whatever the thought is, Just let it come and let it go. Refocus on your breathing. Okay? And don't be discouraged if you find yourself constantly having to chase your thoughts. It's very common. But the more you try this exercise, the more effective you will be at it. Okay? A version of this is also used by the military to help their soldiers fall asleep. So think about soldiers who are on active duty. They're sometimes in conditions that really are not conducive to sleep. So they have to learn how to get rest where they can, when they can. So this aspect of concentrating on the breathing and driving out the distracting thoughts can be helpful. And finally, this is one of my favorites. I use this one every day. Positive thinking. So quick way to boost happiness and reduce your sad thinking. So this can often raise your spirits a bit and help you see things. It's not going to chance, it's not magic, but it can help you see things in a more balanced way or slightly more positive way. So there are two versions. So one is thinking of a positive moment. So for example, eating a sweet piece of fruit. So right now, citrus is in season all over the Caribbean. So maybe you had a really nice orange or a nice Portugal. So on the way to work today, I bought some Portugals and I'm looking forward to going home and enjoying some of them. So maybe you remember when you had that juicy orange or juicy Portugal and it was so yummy. Maybe it's some bird song. Maybe it's a cool evening breeze. Maybe it is your puppy or kitten playing or your loved one laughing. So the idea is by reliving the positive moment, it puts you back in that mood state and it gives you that boost. And the variation of that is to think of an image. So I know a lot of us have pictures on our phones or in a house. So Tennille, when you were presenting, I saw some pictures in the background. So I saw some school pictures, I saw some childhood pictures. And so I'm sure that comes with positive memories for your family. So it could be a picture of a person, an object, a place, or an event. But the idea is that you keep it in your mind so that you can call it to mind whenever you need a good boost. So for example, and perhaps you can, if you can in the chat, tell me what's a positive moment for you or positive image. So here are a few of mine. So these are my little nieces and nephews on the left, and it was one of the rare moments we got a normal smile from all three of them at the same time. So when I see this picture and I see all that cuteness, I have no choice but to smile in return. And that middle picture is one of my 2.5 four-legged babies. That's my cat Kitana. And on that day, I had a lot going on with work. I had to mark papers. I was working on a project. And she decided to come and overtake the keyboard. And so I just let her. She's looking so cute, why not? So whenever I see this memory, this picture, I call it to mind, it gives me a boost. And finally, maybe you like the outdoors and beach as well. So this here, the St. Augustine students might recognize it as Pigeon Point, but for Jamaica, I would call to mind. So Port Antonio is one of my favorite places in Jamaica. I loved visiting there, so I often recollect that as well. So hopefully you can call for your positive images to mind, okay? So those are 3 strategies. Hopefully you might find one of them interesting enough for you to want to try. And with that, I say thank you for your attention. And I'm happy to discuss some of the questions that came up, some of the issues that came up before.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Khan. I think that we get a bonus feature there. Because I wasn't expecting relaxation techniques. In fact, just reading relaxation techniques relax me. So I think this was a really useful presentation for students. I saw some alignments in the topics coming up, and I think the first one I want to deal with is one which is close to me as well, and that's the issue of death, right? And one of the students, I think it was Rishka, was saying she had a death in her family, I think, during the COVID pandemic, and she had to cope with that. And I think it's a reality we all have to face one way or the other. So what would you suggest as the coping mechanisms for dealing with this? Yes, during a pandemic, especially when you're boxed in, and also when you have assignments and you're pressed for time.
So death, of course, is a very tragic thing. And Rishka, if you have had a loss, please accept our condolences. So one of the things that this pandemic has done is has changed a lot of our rituals and routines. So one of the comforting things that gives people solace and peace for when there's a death is having these rituals to allow us to grieve. So when we have the funeral and people come together, when we share our memories, etc., that's very comforting. So it's changed the way that we grieve as well. So part of it is just mentally accepting that that has changed. So how then can you still, how can you replace that ritual with something else that helps meet the need? So again, we have to exploit the technology. So just as how you may have had a memorial or you'd have your wake in person, we've been having to change a lot of things to online. Now, wherever you are, if it's safe and it's allowed with the restrictions, you can still meet safely. You know, you may not be able to hug and have as much physical contact, but it's about what can I do instead? How can I share instead? So for example, people have been doing online memorials. So you set up, and there's some websites that have this feature. So family members can upload pictures. And so others, no matter where they are in the world or wherever they are, they can go online. So you still have that shared sense of community, but it's online instead of face-to-face. Now mentally, again, having to deal with the restrictions and the public health prevention measures can take a toll on your coping. So more so than ever, your self-care and coping, you need to invest in it. So making sure you stay connected, making sure you have strategies to help you relax, to help you have that downtime, and remembering that time taken for self-care is not a luxury, it's not a bonus, it's a necessity. So prioritize that need for you to grieve, to spend time with your family, to remember your loved one, if to take time to go and do something that can help you. So if you want to plant a tree in their memory, if you want to visit a place that they used to like to visit, still remember that those things are priorities. Okay, so I hope
Yes,
that helps.
definitely. And I need to correct an error. It was actually not Rich, it was Ms. G. Sandy. So sorry for that error. So we offer condolences. Yes, that issue of death will forever plague us. And we all, as I said, we all have to face our reality and take time to grieve. I want to throw a question around the room as well. Dr. Khan as well can answer. And this has to do with one of the other topics of time management. I want to ask the presidents or the executives here to kind of chime in on this one before I get back to Dr. Khan and even Dr. Ellis. What is the formula for time management? Is there a one formula or is it an ever-changing formula? So I'm going to ask any of the our student executive members to tackle that question.
Okay, well, personally, I think it's ever changing because you can manage your time how wisely. Sometimes things just occur beyond your control. And you'll have, well, most of them will be urgent, so you have no choice but to go and attend to it. So even if you had a properly planned or scheduled for your day, anything can happen.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Or have you guys mastered time management?
For me as well, is ever changing. Because life happens, you know, even though we schedule certain things or we try to meet certain demands, life happens. So having to know how to work around it, having to be able to change. Even I had a similar experience with a death, but this was before the COVID pandemic. And for me, I had to write a letter to the head of department explaining my situation. And from there, I was able to have my exam shifted to a different date that was more plausible for me or feasible for me. So in that person's circumstance, reaching out to the faculty members is a great help. Other faculties that could also help in that situation, because communication is key, especially in this time of the pandemic, where we can't really physically interact. So just reaching out and communicating could help in that situation as well. But yeah, so in terms of time management, schedule, but have to also realize that in life, even though we schedule, certain things may happen. So knowing how to readjust and to adapt and do certain things that would help us during the situation so that we could be more focused.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that view. Anyone else? All right. Let's look at the issue of
Dr. Samuel,
finance. Oh, sorry, Dr. Khan. Yes, you had a view.
just one thing I wanted to add about
Yeah,
the
sure,
time
go ahead.
management. I'd say, again, just your self-awareness is important to know what strategies work for you and fit your personality and how you work. So for example, I realized this about myself since I was a student over 20 years ago. I'm an assignment person. So I am never more productive as that 24 hours before the assignment is due. And I have colleagues who are the exact opposite. From the day they get the assignment, they're working on it and they submit early. So who are the
Correct.
early submitters? I don't know what that feels like. So
Yeah, that's actually me. I would submit for the time you get the assignment, I would start looking at it.
there you go. So therefore, your strategies. So therefore, you might get more work done in the early parts of when the assignment is handed out. And then somebody like me, I would know that, what, those 2 days before, that's when I'm going to get most of my work done. So therefore, I can't have too many activities on that day. Otherwise, I'm going to run into trouble. And then I have to be careful. Murphy's Law, something happens. So I have to build in for that as well. So I would say knowing yourself, by now you should have an idea under what conditions you work effectively and how to best maximize that.
All right. One of the other topics that came up was finances. So my question is, we all have limited finances. And I will say that maybe not everyone is happy with their level of finances. You always want to do better. How do you manage that expectation against you achieving your degree? So the question online wasn't specific. So I thought it may have referred to whether you needed finances to finish your degree and what kind of help you could get, what kind of support you could get. If anyone could want to address that question. Perhaps one of these students here in our executives, have you faced financial hardships and what solutions you could suggest to these year 1, year 2, year 3 students?
One thing that really helped for me in terms of finances, there is a strategy now where you can pay like a down payment each month for the first 3 months, which
Right.
I found was really helpful in terms of paying school fees. So you don't have to pay the whole fee up front, like a lump sum contract. You don't have to pay the whole fee one time, but you could pay in parts.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you could pay in yeah, so like you could pay it in parts. You could pay the first month, pay the second month, and then the third month, and it is really helpful in terms of paying school fees. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Khan, you wanted to contribute there?
Yeah, so I would say just building on that, Andrew, because I think that's excellent, that knowing that the university has that facility. So I would say if as it pertains to tuition and school fees, you definitely want to reach out to the financial services and figure out what would be the best option. Knowing that no, you don't have to pay the lump sum, the university has facilities in place. And if you are in a real bind, we loan funds that are available, emergency loan funds that are available to students. I know Mona has a facility where they were also lending devices. So let's say you can't afford a new device or your old device is just not working or you don't have a device. So I would say really try to exploit all of the options that the university has. And this is where student organizations are really important because oftentimes they are often the agency to make students aware that these things exist. Sometimes students go, oh, I didn't know that. And sometimes it's through the clubs that they become aware. If it's personal finances, I think that one's a little more challenging. This is a very real one. So whether it's something you're dealing with before, whether your family has been affected because of the pandemic, I would also say reach out to the university, reach out to your program coordinator, let them know
Yeah.
what you're dealing with, and they can help you through some academic advising as well to work through
Yeah,
what
to solve the problem. Yeah.
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 So the idea is that you are not in this alone. You don't have to struggle with it alone. One of the things I love about UE is that we're really invested in our students' welfare. We want you to thrive. It's we all want to be part of this institution. We want the best for our students. So please reach out, and it's good for you to know in your program who are the people you find approachable, because you might say, oh, not everybody I want to open up to, but it's really
Exactly.
important that you know at
Exactly.
least one or two faculty members you could reach out to for some guidance.
Yeah, there's support mechanisms all around for those kind of issues. So I'm going to close with two more questions, and then we'll be finishing at 5 p.m. Trinidad time, 4 p.m. Jamaica time. And I'm going to ask one question to two specific persons in the chat. So the question is, I took it was a great question at the end of Dr. Khan's presentation, which was, what inspired you to become a civil engineer? So I want that, I would like Dr. Ellis to, if he's still here in the chat, I see him there, if he can answer that question from his perspective, and then Ashley, if she could answer the question from her perspective. Dr. Ellis. All right. Dr. Ellis is on radio silent. All right, Ashley, what inspired you to be a civil engineer?
Okay, so when I was in high school, when I was in prep school, I wanted to be a pediatrician. But to be very honest with you, I only wanted to be a pediatrician because everybody else wanted to be a pediatrician. And then when I went into high school, I actually got separated from most of my friends. And going through high school, of course, that pediatrician thing fell out of my head. And then it came, and when I was in grade 8, I said I wanted to be a fashion designer because I liked sewing and stuff. But for the life of me, I don't like working with a sewing machine. I realized I only like embroidery. So that changed. So by the time I got to grade 9 and I got a feel of what the subjects were about, and I realized, oh, this physics thing is kind of cool and I like it. And for me, math was never an issue. And so when I got into grade 9 and I was looking into the research as to what subjects I should do and the associated careers. So there's a book that they gave us, a CXC guide. So it had the career and then the subjects you would do. So I chose like 3 broad subjects so that I could always have a career. So it's either going into accounting or financing or being a chiropractor or being an engineer. But going forward, when I got into like almost the CSEC phase, or sexy or that type of level, I realized that I was going to zero in on engineering, mainly because I did not like biology. And I just didn't think that I wanted to just sit and crunch numbers in financing. I know it's not just about sitting and crunching numbers, but it never really spoke to me like that. So then I did more research on it, and I was reading up on civil engineering, and I said, okay, I like this structural engineering thing. I realized that I like physics. I then realized that not only was I good at math, but I started to really get into it, really get into liking it. And then I did technical drawing, and I realized that I like the drawing aspect of this. So I said, okay, I am going to study civil engineering. And that's what it stuck with me from grade 10 straight to grade 13 into university. Of course, now my goal has changed in the sense of I no longer want to do or focus on structural engineering for many reasons, but it's just no longer, structural engineering is probably not where my future is heading. It's probably heading towards the stormwater and wastewater aspect.
Ah,
but
yes.
that's the beauty of it. The beauty of this degree is that there are so many disciplines, there are so many things that you can branch off into. And I'm just very appreciative of that. And at the same time, I had an advisor, a family friend who's also in the Faculty of Engineering. He basically was telling me about the program. And so from an early stage, I knew that, okay, this is something I could get into. I recognized that it was more of math, physics, and some econ. And I said to myself, these are, my areas. So that's why I was going into it. And now I feel that I have made the right choice. And yeah, that's my story.
Yes, very traditional story, and that is what we're looking for: inspiration for our students and future generation of civil engineers. So, as we're on the final 5 minutes of this very informative and highly quality seminar, I would want to focus on this issue of thinking positive, and I'll tell you why from my personal experience. Anybody who knows me knows that that is my greatest challenge. My wife tells me all the time, Don, you need to think positive, think positive, think positive. And for the last 20-something, I've seen 20-something years, I feel like 20-something years, it's actually 10 years we married just now. But she has always been telling me, think positive. And this is really, you won't believe it, how this influences everything. Because thinking negative, in my opinion, generates the negative actions or outcomes. But when you think positive, and you have to learn to think positive in light of negative. So that is the challenge. You see negative things coming at you, you don't accept it, right? You reject it, you think positive. So we're going to do one final thought here. So just from everyone, I'll go around the room and I just want one technique, what you have learned in this session on thinking positive. So I'll put you on the spot there. So starting with Maya, who is smiling from ear to ear. Thinking positive, Maya, unmute.
Okay, do you want like a scenario or an example?
Just one quick quip on thinking positive. What have you learned? What is that one technique, one sentence?
Okay. Well, there's a saying that, as a man thinketh, so is he. So if you engulf yourself with negative thoughts, negative thinking, that would be your output. If you try to see the better side of situations, it just might work.
Good. I love that. Ms. Balfour. I think Ms. Balfour is still here with us. All
I'm
right.
here.
Ah,
So,
nice. Yes. One thought, thinking positive.
mine is close to Amaya's. I would say you attract what you put out.
Ah, interesting.
So,
I love
if
that.
that's what you're giving out, that's exactly what's going to come back to you.
I like
So
that.
try to stay positive.
All right. Miss Wilson. If you are still there with us, Miss Wilson. No? All right. Oh, look, sure, she wrote something. So, and she said, and I agree that attitude is a choice. And that's very important. In fact, a former professor, former president of mine, he said, your attitude determines your altitude. Right? So that's a good thing. That was my contribution right here. Don't steal it. All right. Miss Tamara Abdul, give us one sentence on positive thinking.
I really liked the idea of combating one negative thought with 3 positive thoughts.
Ah, interesting. Miss Donald. All right. We'll come back to Miss Donald. Miss McPherson, again, one thought, positive thinking.
More smiling, less worrying.
More smiling, less what? Studying? All right.
Less worrying.
Oh, less worrying. Oh, Oh, that one was for me. That one was for me for sure. I'm Leighton smiling because he knows I'm the eternal warrior. And Leighton, I'm the eternal warrior, and Leighton is the eternal prayer warrior. That's the relationship we have. All right, Mr. Fonset, we've really appreciated your style of dress today for today's session.
Thank you. What we think is what we manifest, and what we manifest becomes a reality. So I used to always hear Muhammad Ali saying he's the greatest of all time. And he said those things even when he wasn't the greatest, because his belief allowed him to become the greatest. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Dr. Ellis, I think we have a Dr. Fonset coming up here. All right, so Marie, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Nice. Give us one thought, one sentence.
I expect the best, aspire for the best, and do my best.
All right, simple. Dr. Ellis.
Deo do quare optima.
No, I missed that one. Come again.
Deo do quare optima, Latin. With God as guide, we seek the best.
All
So
right.
that was our school motto that we had, and I still remember it from high school, and it still has hold true even to today.
Yes, my one from high school was actually ad posse, ad esse, from possibility to actuality in Naparima College. Right, and finally, our keynote speaker close off with one sentence on positive thinking.
Well, I actually love Dr. Samuel. I often use this as a strategy as well, positive mantras. So it's great to hear all the great mantras that the students have given. My one is really short and simple. You've got this. So no matter what the hurdle is, I tell myself, you've got this. And it's working so far. So,
Great. All right, so I want to thank everyone, but starting from our keynote speaker, Dr. Khan, and our two presidents and their support, very special support teams. And thank you for Dr. Ellis for also putting this together. We had one rep online, that's Loretta from Barbados. She was in and out of the session, so she did contribute and said that it was very eye-opening. And to the YouTube members, we had about 40 persons at one point in time in our session. It's now boiled down to 19 because I think we are at that close point. To all the comments online from Rishka, Jordan, G. Sandy, Daniel, Stewart, Mr. Ramuta, Marksman, Lowe, Mr. Miller, Mr. Smith, Mr. Rajak, Nima, I don't know if he's a footballer, right? And to all of you, thank you for participating in this session. I think we'll probably do one more student session like this at some point before the semester closes, we'll see. But thanks again, and I wish you the very, very good afternoon. Thanks again.